Hello and welcome to Stand With Us TV Live. Stand With Us is working around the clock supporting Israel and fighting anti-Semitism. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show for you today. Coming up, I'll be joined by one of Israel's humble heroes. In 1947, this American sailor arrived in British Mandate Palestine on the Hope, or Hatikva, ship, which was just one of the many ships operating to smuggle Holocaust survivors from Europe to what would become Israel. Today, at age 94, Murray Greenfield remains one of the only known sailors of this important mission that is alive today. And God bless him. Murray is the author of the book, The Jews' Secret Fleet, the untold story of North American volunteers who smashed the British blockade. Among his many accolades, Murray is one of the founding members of the Association of Americans and Canadians in Israel. He is also a fixture in the Israeli-American community and has made a tremendous impact on life for Israel's Anglo community. Besides being the founder of Geffen Books, Murray has pioneered many business and community efforts during his many years in Israel. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Murray Greenfield. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your very special story is going to be heard by thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and we're so honored to have you with us, a real live hero.
You know, hero is always true, maybe, but exaggeration. And I think it's a wonderful time you picked, but it's before Pesach, before Passover, and that's the what do we call it? It's called the freedom, the freedom holiday, and so I think it's a wonderful time to be with you, and so the other people here, they know this is done at Passover.
So
Shalom.
Shalom. So let's talk about freedom and how you helped bring so many people to their freedom. Let's start from the beginning. You were a sailor.
Yes.
And you finished the service and came home, and somebody approached you about doing this incredible thing. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, it's what happened is that, as you mentioned, it was the end of my time. I had served, and I was going to theoretically go back to school and study something, which I didn't do when I was in high school anyway. I was never a good student. I was a great student. I was always a good student in terms of other things, but not studying. Anyway, I am brought up in a very traditional home. And when I came back, when I quit the sailing, I went to the synagogue Saturday morning. I'll go see what's happening. Maybe some of the other fellas are there that went to the synagogue with me. And there were a half a dozen fellas like myself who had come. Some were more religious, some less religious. And each of us sort of, while the rabbi was talking, we had time to talk also. So each of us was telling each other what we sort of had done. And one fella, he said, "You were on ships?" I said, yes. I even learned how to do things. He says, "Wow, they need guys like you." I said, "I don't like ships." I said, "A lonely job." I said, and when you're out at sea, there's nobody to talk to. When I say nobody, it's because there are very few Jewish boys in this kind of operation. At any rate, I met after synagogue. He talked with me, and he said, "Look, they're looking for people to volunteer and take ships from America to Europe, get the Jews out of Europe and bring them to Palestine. I said, wow, it sounds interesting. I'm very Jewish and I'd like to find out. I had a call a few days later and I was asked to come downtown, New York. And I told nobody about what I was doing because it was my business. And I was told to meet this fella at a certain corner in New York City. And he would be standing next to the telephone booth and he'd have a newspaper reading it there. A whole thing was such a cloak and dagger thing. I said, well, what kind of business is this? Well, I met the guy and he took me to have coffee. In those days, coffee was a nickel and it was wonderful. And this fellow wants to know who I am and what I am. And I tell him what I know about ships, what I learned, what I didn't learn. And oh, he says, we'd love to have you. And I thought, well, I was really very important, but I found out later everybody was important. There weren't enough sailors that were ready to go. There was volunteers, but not enough real sailors. And I was a genuine sailor. Okay. He tells me you may get caught by the British and you may go to prison for a few years. And I said, well, then surely I must go. You're not going to let the Jews get out of Europe and go to Palestine? And I said, yes, I'll go. What do you get paid? He says, there's no pay. I said, no pay? How long will it take? He says, anywhere from a few months to a year. I says, no money. What do we do? Right? You know, ship, you go, you get food and room and board. And after that, you don't need anything.
Tell us, please. You had to tell your family. You had to tell your mother that you're not going to go to college. Instead, you're doing something secret for the Jewish people, right?
You're right. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. And this fella tells us you can't tell anyone. It's a secret. He says the authorities are against it. So I go home. It was a Friday. I'll never forget. And Friday was the day to wash the kitchen floor. And we were a bunch of brothers. We each took his turn when to do it. We were a house. Everybody did everything. And so I volunteered that when I got home, I said, oh, I'll wash the kitchen floor. And my mother looked at me. This son has become very good. Who knows what she thought. But I washed the floor. And then I said, Mom, I want to sit down and talk to you. And I said, Mom, I have to make one more trip. One more trip. I thought you're going to go to college now. I said, Mom, I think I have to go to college a little later. I got something to do. It's very important. She said, what do you mean? What could be more important than going to college? And you got to understand, my parents came by themselves in the lowest part of their ship, wherever they came. And they had nothing, no money, no nothing. And they worked their way up. My father worked hard. My mother worked. And the children to go to college was the most important thing in their life. Mm-hmm. And we were 5 brothers, and my oldest brother and my second brother, they were all planning to go. Me, I suddenly tell her, no, not now. I'll go when I come back from this last trip. And she's disturbed. So I said, Mom, I want to do something good, and it's good for the Jewish people. Her answer was very straight. You want to do something for the Jewish people? You go do it. You don't have to go to college. And I understood that with her because her family was all destroyed in Europe. She was from Poland, and nobody came. Nobody came through. And her Holocaust was a terrible thing to be involved to know everything about. I remember my father had given her, I guess, an engagement or a marriage ring, which was a big thing. It was he made a hard living, and suddenly it was missing. And my father looks. He says, "Where's the ring?" She said, "I sold it." She said, "What do you mean you sold it? I gave it to you." He says, "You gave it to me I sold it. What do I need? A ring on my finger. In Europe, they need food. They need help. I sold it and I sent everything to Europe. So that always stood in my mind, and I bring it up to you now as I'm talking. It disturbed me all my life. It reminded me of things all my life. Then I went to my next to my oldest brother, and I told him, listen, you have to keep the quiet here. He had just come back from 4 years in the army, and he was an officer. And I said, you just have I tell you what I'm doing. Wow, he says, that's great. He says, come with me to my office. He's a dentist. He had brains. What is it? He comes to his office, and he opens up the drawers, and he's got a bunch of pills. He says, these are all samples of all the different companies. Take them. People will get sick on the ship. He says, you give it to them and tell them it's good for seasickness. And believe it or not, it worked. That was the beginning. I met the fellas in New York City, in Baltimore. A nice bunch of fellas. Most of them were not sailors. They all had the same basic idea. Somebody's got to help the survivors. And we became a team on a ship. And the ship was old. It was built in the 1900, which is very old for a ship. It's already 1950, 47, 48. And that was the beginning.
Wasn't it a banana boat? Can you tell us about that part?
Well, okay. Now, so of course, they had to have some kind of a story. And bananas. They said they're going to go to Europe and you're going to fix up the ship to be able to carry bananas. That was the story. Now, how did it get into this banana business? There was a nice boy who came to America from Russia. He was sent down to Texas because the powers that be, what they called the Hayas or whoever they were, tried to send Jews all over America. They didn't think it should only be New York. And he there worked. Ships used to come in with bananas, and he worked on the street, on the ships. And as he worked, he found out and became very smart. And he ended up living down in South America, created the biggest banana company in the world, and he bought ships. When I say he bought them, the group in New York that got together and were asked to get ships didn't know how to buy ships. Of course, these were people having their own businesses, had nothing to do with ships. But they heard about him. He became a part of it all, and he was the banana man. He bought the ships, all for bananas, so-called. And so when we brought the ship to Portugal, my vessel, the Hatikva, we went into Portugal, and a group of workers came on board, and everybody knew this ship is being converted to a banana ship.
So you were doing this in Portugal? That's where you were building?
That's where we built the ship, yes.
Okay,
yes.
So let me just clarify. The cover was that it was a banana boat.
That's right.
What you were building, that you were pretending that they were going to be shelves for bananas, were going to be beds for people.
That's right. Beds, well, planks of wood, no mattress, no nothing. Just, right.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And I couldn't believe it, of course. And none of us could. But we didn't know who these people were. When we got them, we realized and learned right away what they went through. This was wonderful. They're getting out of Europe. It was an amazing thing to see. Well, we'll get to that soon if you want to.
So where did you first pick up the first group of a few hundred people? Where was that?
Okay, well, we sailed from Portugal to Italy. In Italy, we were told to take all our personal things and leave them there to the Haganah. And when you go back home, you'll get them back. Well, I did get back home, but never got anything back. But that was okay. It was a year later, nearly. And we were told to wait. And then one night, we got on our radio operator, who was also an American from Baltimore, Maryland, and Sonny Weintraub, and get notice, sail. And we start sailing. We sail along the coast of Italy, and we get a signal from the shore, and we pull our vessel in right onto the shore, There's no dock, there's nothing. And within minutes, we see people coming from the hills around where we are, walking down on trucks, and it's midnight. It's maybe even later, and we see this thing, and they come out, and we have to help them get onto the vessel. And it's amazing, because how could we understand it? Born in America, brought up with the best of it. Even if you weren't wealthy, you were still brought up with good food and good ways. How could you understand people walking in the middle of the night and climbing onto this vessel, and it's just unbelievable. And I only remember that I learned a little bit at Hebrew school, not much. I learned how to pray, but one of the stories you learned about is that there was a Jews going up to heaven, and they climbed a rope, and there was good rope, bad rope. And I imagined a lot of things, but that night we loaded 750 survivors. We schlepped them out. We took them in small boats. They swam everything. They had nothing. What did they have with them? A small package of clothing. And that night, and we then sailed offshore, and we waited until the next night. And we came back to a different dock. It wasn't a dock, a different shore, and we got 750 more. And so in those two loadings, we had 1,500 survivors. Now, I was lucky. In fact, my parents spoke Yiddish all their life, and I learned Yiddish just by listening. And I talked with these people. I couldn't believe it, what they had gone through, who they were, how they got from after the war down to the shore here. It was all a fairy tale, but it was a live fairy tale. And they were no old people. Old people were dead. They were younger people. And all because my parents spoke Yiddish, I knew Yiddish. Because I knew Yiddish, I could understand these people talking. And it was, for me, an eye-opener. Well, my Jewish people, I read about the Shoah after the war. Lots of things told us, but you don't know anything until you meet one. It takes one to meet one. And everybody I spoke to told me a different Holocaust story. This one, no parents. This one, no brothers. This one, camps, or whatever it was. And at the beginning, you thought these people are making things up, but you couldn't make this up. They all went through the same thing. And of course, children without parents, parents without children, whatever it was, it changed. It changed everything I ever thought of, could ever dream of. And we set sail and for Palestine. Now, a ship is not small, and we're going to get caught. But we tell everybody we'll make it. We're a fast ship. We weren't such a fit. No ships. The vessels we had in those days couldn't go very fast. the British had the best of equipment, but you had to give hope. On the other hand, we didn't really have to give hope. They gave us hope. These people said, we are going to make it. And I said to them, sugar. What do you mean you're going to? Wait, how are you going to get there? We can't go fast. We don't have much of a vessel. Well, 5 days later, the British Navy catches up with us, and we're not far from the coast of Haifa. And the British say, okay, give up. We're going to take you into port. And the truth is that we were naive. And I'm talking about we, the American volunteers, because these people say, no, we'll fight. And when the British came on board with the weapons that they had, they didn't use them. Looked at it, some people, some of the young men tried to fight with them, but they realized it was a lost cause. And by the time nightfall on that first day, we were captured. We're captured. Can't do anything. And as nightfall, it's dramatic, but it's true. Suddenly, somebody has an Israeli flag, whatever it was they called Israel. There wasn't an Israel. They had a flag with a Morgan David with the Jewish star on it. And we raised it up, and they sang some kind of a hymn. They knew it. I never heard it before. Later, I learned there was a song called Hatikva the Jews sang, but I didn't know it. I knew how to pray. I didn't know how and what to sing. And
so, Murray,
yeah.
the name of the vessel was the Hatikva.
Hatikva, yes. They told us how to name it. And the people, when the British attacked us, they started to schlep us into Haifa Harbor. These people got up, like one man. They stand up and start singing this song. And I'm looking, what the hell are they singing about? You know, here we've just been beaten. We're being taken someplace we don't want to go. And they're singing Hatikva. And only, of course, as I lived with them in the Cyprus camps, did I realize this was wonderful. They had come to a new life. There was a chance of having a family, because these were all singles. There were very few members two members of a family. So that night we slept. We didn't sleep on the ship. We came into Haifa Harbor. We were taken off this vessel and then put onto another vessel. And we were all the smaller vessels, picked a bunch of us. We broke it down into sections. And we then get taken off someplace called Cyprus, behind barbed wire, tents, and lots of people. I look around and I said, my God, we're going to live here? Now, we are cautioned by the British. I'm talking about us young Americans. Don't tell them where you're from. Don't talk to them. Hide. Do whatever you can. Otherwise, you may go to jail. Well, you know, we really didn't understand. Only after I looked back at everything did I understand what this was all about. At the time, I was taking orders, so to speak, and I felt that something there was different. And of course, that night when we got into Cyprus and we were we walked over to some place. They said, okay, go to sleep now, and tomorrow where to go to sleep? On the ground.
Can we talk a little bit about the way that people were feeling when the British came on the boat and when it was intercepted in that way, and that everybody's dream of walking on the land was just shattered at that point? And what was that like for everybody?
You see, being an American, and I'm talking about the other sailors really, we of course were shocked. And I was listening to the survivors. They knew and understood that they're being put behind barbed wire again, but not to be killed, not to be subjected to all kinds of inhuman things. And they knew that they're going to win. And for them, they were straight up, they were strong. I can say myself, with the Americans around, the sailors, to a large extent, we didn't understand them. Boy, how can you be happy that you're getting caught, be put behind barbed wire? They don't even give you a bed to sleep on. They don't even give you you get a tent and you have to put up the tent, and you're not exactly a great tent puller upper. So to us, it was absolutely shocking, because this is 1947, and the war World War II is over a couple of years. We had all served someplace. It just didn't make sense until later, years later, that slowly but surely you could figure it all out. The soldiers, they weren't bad people. They were just like you. They were normal people with you. they didn't shoot at us to kill us, and yet we were enemies. It was a very, I would say, more than depressing. It was an event which, of course, you hear me telling you. I tell you about it because I never know what words to use. I'm not sure, because I'm so bitter about their catching us and putting us on Cyprus. On the other hand, I said, gee, in talking with the people, they knew that they're going to come out of this alive, which is something they didn't know when they were in Europe and the Germans and all the others around were looking to kill them. So you get you get hope, you lose hope, and it becomes very confusing. Now, since I knew Yiddish, I could learn more about how people felt, and they didn't have a bad feeling to the British. Overall, they realized that these fellas were doing their job. Also, they found that most of the British were very decent guys. They did terrible things. Sure, they pushed you, and they didn't give you enough food, and there was a shortage of water always on Cyprus. On the other hand, they think of if this had been Germans or any European group, they would have been killed, finished. So people got married in Cyprus, had children born in Cyprus, because they felt they had to rebuild their lives and their families' lives. So I don't know. I've read all these different things, and there are people that are philosophical about it, and people are all kinds of, they say, well, look at this, how terrible. And I say, no, they weren't so terrible, and then I decided I'm not going to tell anybody what I thought, because yes, they were terrible. No, they were not so terrible. It's a very difficult thing. The people, these survivors, had spirit and found a way to make life better. We Americans, we were kind of, I wouldn't say crybabies, but we're not like them. And it's understandable. We know you work hard and you make a living, and you get you get with for what you've done. You get payment. You have food, and here suddenly we're prisoners. But it worked. Look, some people were in Cyprus as much as 2 years. Most people over a year. I forget, thousands thousands were brought in on these ships. Our little ship, 1,500. The Exodus, well, they didn't get to Cyprus. They were sent back to Europe. One of these other terrible things that the British did. And I look back, I look at what they did. It was out of ignorance. Out of ignorance that they took the Jews and sent them back. We're going to punish you. You can't punish these people. They've been punished. Their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, they're all dead. Their punishment was great enough. Now you think you're not punishing them by sending them back to Germany. You're doing the most ridiculous thing that could be done. But they did send them back to Germany. And the Jews did make troubles. And I can understand also, because if I were back in Germany with them, I would have made trouble too, the same as I made whatever I could. The Jews figured out ways to live. They taught. They had classes. They were teaching Hebrew. I said, the future's in Hebrew. Songs. There were religious groups had their own way. It was an amazing thing how they rebounded and brought life into everything was dead. Yeah.
They remained positive even on Cyprus. They remained positive even though they were being held prisoners.
They rebounded like, I always am marveling at it. Now it's a long time since then. That was 1946, 7. And I still cannot believe how these people and really came back to life, started to build families. They started an educational program because they knew there's a future for them, and lost everything. Everything is gone. Family, friends, apartments, everything. If they were poor, that everything went also. If they had something, that went also.
Murray, we have thousands of people watching us from all over the world, and people have questions for you. So would you mind answering a few questions?
I'll do my best.
All right. So if you answer the questions, maybe a short answer, then we can get through
okay.
Questions.
All right. That's good advice. I'm a long-winded person.
No. You're wonderful.
It's okay.
And your story is quite extraordinary and so unusual. I mean, how can you can't find anybody to tell these stories these days. So we are most grateful and honored, really. And
thanks.
So what is your recommendation to people who are asking how they can help keep this story alive?
Oh boy, it's not easy. First of all, you got to talk about it. It shouldn't be hidden. It shouldn't be hidden. I guess people read, but since there's none of us left, I mean, it's just the end of an era. It's a very difficult thing for me to answer. You can listen to me and I can answer you and I spend hours with you telling you stories and good. I'm sure you get something out of it. The next question is, how do you do something with it? Now, with me, I got married to a Holocaust survivor. We had children. And of course, in our home, we could talk about it very openly. And in Israel, every other one was a Holocaust survivor. So it was easy. I'll tell you something that my wife did. My wife learned English and became a good English speaker. And she was asked to speak in schools. Even in America, when we traveled, we told people, well, we're ready to talk. And the people say, oh, good, we'll get the. She said, no, I don't want you to get parents. I want you to bring me children. Because the parents, if they didn't read it, forget about it. I want to talk to the children. And I remember different schools, and one in particular in Ohio, in which all the kids were put into a big auditorium, and Hannah spoke to them. Now, she spoke good English. She spoke with them, and they had some questions. And at the end, she said, "I'd like you to do one thing," she asked the children. "I want you to sit down on one page. Write me about something you learned from me or wanted to learn it. Write something. I'd like to know what you think, how you feel. Doesn't have to be good or bad. Just write something. One page, not more." Well, dozens of pages she got. The school got. And they gave it to Hannah. The teachers were shocked how well the children absorbed and repeated it in their own words. And I think maybe that's one of the answers. Don't go into big books. I'm not sure how much kids want to read. I think short stories. Read them and tell it back in your own words. You'll make mistakes, so what?
Tell us about your book.
Me, well.
Where's your book? You have your book next to you, right?
Yeah, I have it. Yes, oh yes, I do. See, here it is. First of all, this is the Hebrew book, and this is the English book.
So can you hold it up so we could see if maybe, yeah, there you go.
This is the Jews' secret fleet. Now, it's people said to me, what are you talking about? Secret? What's the secret? Well, the Jews were taken out of Europe on what they call the illegal ships. The ships were bought, some 10 of them, in the United States, manned by volunteers like myself. And I mean volunteers. It's not a matter of just being a volunteer. They didn't pay you, but they did pay to get us back to America. But there was no financial payment at any time.
Can you tell us a little bit about the other volunteers that you remember?
Oh, sure. Yes. I remember them all. All. I mean, it's an exaggeration, but I remember them. First of all, why did I call it the secret fleet? Because until I wrote about it, nobody knew about it. Everybody knew his ship. People knew this ships, but they didn't know where they came from or what. And suddenly, the secret is out. And of course, I want you to know when I first put it out in Hebrew, I'm like, Greenfield, Murray, what are you talking about? I said, well, look, this ship. They said, what do we mean? I said, no, came from America. Bunch of young boys joined up, not paid. They did get a trip back home. That they did. They helped you back home. But that, and people suddenly started to say, gee, they always said, well, what are you doing? What are the Americans doing? Now, these were not only Jews, they were mostly Jewish sailors, most volunteers. There were others who were not. Not that many, but it sort of wasn't their piece of business, you know. But we manned 10 different vessels, which means about 40, 50 men each, 400 or 500 men, volunteers, not getting paid, no place. It's going to Cyprus behind barbed wire. Some fellows were caught and they were put into prison in Akko. That's when in Israel. The British didn't know what to do with this. The truth is, they didn't. We weren't enemies, but we weren't friends. But when I first started to talk about it, and then I decided I got to find out what it's all about. So I went through papers and everything. I found out in America how they raised the money. It had to be raised sub rosa. It couldn't be told because it was not tax-free money. It was money people paid in into a group, and they bought the vessels, and nobody knew. The men who even gave the money didn't want anybody to know anything because it was illegal. Was it illegal? There's a big argument on that all the time. You know, legal, not illegal. But it was illegal. And they still put up the money.
Just to be sure that everybody understands, the reason it was a secret fleet was because the British were at the time not allowing the Jewish people who survived the Holocaust, they were not allowing them into Israel. So there had to be this secret fleet to get them from Europe, where they were living in displaced persons camps, DP camps like my mother. My mother was in a DP camp and my father for 5 years. And so these ships, these vessels were taking people. There was a bricha. The bricha was organizing the people in Europe, walking long, long walks over mountains to be able to get to these vessels. And there you were, Murray. There you were on a vessel, like a dream for a Holocaust survivor, to walk and walk and walk nights and days and days and nights, and then finally see you and all the other sailors in the vessels waiting for them on the shores to take them to their dream, to take them to what would become the state of Israel. So it is pretty remarkable what you did. And we are all so grateful, including me personally, because both my parents survived the Holocaust, and one of them actually went on such a vessel, the Shabtai Luzinski.
Oh, yes, sure.
And by the grace of God, actually, the British did not catch.
That's right. They made it. They made it.
They actually, he jumped off the ship. He swam to shore, and he, mixed in with all the people, the locals, and they gave him clothes, and then he joined the Haganah. So that's a little bit of my background, but it crosses over with your story. And so I just want to tell you, I'm personally grateful to you. And I know that this is a chapter, this is an important story that everybody should know, and they don't. So we are very, very indebted to you for sharing your story today, Murray.
Well, they should take, I mean, I'm so happy that your father jumped off the ship and made it, and that they were a part of it all, because I don't have to talk to. I start to talk to you now. Most people think I'm a sugar. And when I started to write the book, they said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "That's what it is. I'm not making it up." And sometimes you say to yourself, "Gee whiz, how the hell do people understand?" But the truth is, they did understand. And slowly but surely, it became a piece of history that the survival of a Jew after the war was not just in the hands of the survivor himself. People, Jews in particular, but there were also some non, joined in the fight. They, on my ship, Jewish boys, all had been in World War II. Some were not even Jews. It's a story of wonderful Americanism. These were good. This is America. That's what America is supposed to believe in: freedom and justice and decency. And we did. And we didn't do it out of just being Jewish. But we did it all because these people deserve to live. And your parents are part of it. What can I tell you?
You have told us so much. What year did you write your book?
87. And
You You printed,
Years.
it was printed the first time in 87?
Yes. Now it took me years and years to put together, because as I put things together, I started to say, geez, really? Things I found out. And Palestinians, meaning Israelis, they said, hey, why don't you do it in Hebrew? So I did it in Hebrew also. And it's not as good as the English one, but Hebrew is my third language. It's Yiddish is first, English is second, and Hebrew is third.
So you were speaking Yiddish before you spoke English?
I don't know if that's true, but practically maybe yes. It could be. As a little boy, I spoke Yiddish. But then, as you get to your friends, get to meet all these other kids speaking English, I guess you convert to it all. And I got to like Yiddish. And because I liked it, first of all, I started with the expressions. There's also good expression. Yiddish has got a lot of expressions. In fact, I think it's a language of all because it's got expression. Of course it is. And then, of course, I had this muzzle, this luck of volunteering and finding that it was a live language. I could really use it all over every day for everything. And so I worked at it harder. And of course, now I use it for fun because there's nobody to listen to me anymore. But
It's hard to find people that speak Yiddish.
Of course, but that's all right. Now I tell you, when I was growing up, my mother and father, they were part of the Yiddish speaking group. That's how people survived in America. They joined groups from their hometown, and they helped each other. And in order to make money, they had theater parties in Yiddish. And they used to schlep me. My other brothers were older. Now they want to go. But me, I was the younger one. I went with them. I had a wonderful time. All these funny names that came up later became famous in acting and things. I knew them. I knew them in the sense that I had been there. And I had lots of fun with Yiddish. And like they say, Yiddish is not a language you speak. It talks itself.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah,
well, thankfully, Yiddish helped you understand all the survivors.
And I could understand how they talk. And then I had, of course, I learned the nuances because from different parts of Europe that they came from, they also had different languages, Yiddish, but different. But
different dialects. Murray, our time has come to an end, but I
hope not. I only have 94 years old. I got time.
Oh my gosh, God bless you. This was a remarkable show, and I am so grateful to you. I know everybody out there is grateful to you too, and we want to learn more. You've made us want to learn more about the secret fleet of the Jewish people. So we will hopefully buy your book.
I will have no objection.
Murray Greenfield. Is it on Amazon?
Of course it's on Amazon.
Of course.
Yeah. It's on Amazon, wherever. And you go, if somebody says they can't find it, you drop me a note via your office. I'll take care of it.
You're going to make a lot of new friends on this show.
with pleasure, with pleasure. Anybody who wants to know and learn about that period of time will get, I think, first of all, a different picture of what was going on. But more important than that, you will also see that the people didn't stand by and just let them get. They didn't just stand by. They tried to stay alive. They tried to do things. And under the most difficult circumstances, they made it. They made it. And it's true. You need help always. When you're a kid, you need help. When you're older, you need help. And at my age, I surely need help. But,
Thank you, Murray. Thank you so much for sharing. This was so great.
oh, I hope to see you when you get here.
I am going to see you when I get there, and this COVID business is going to be over, and I'm going to visit you. Actually, you'll come and speak to our group when we come to Israel. When Stand With Us brings, we're going to have a mission in October, and
Okay.
I'll come and visit you, and you'll tell your story to our group.
Toda and shalom.
We will be taking a short break for the Passover holiday and be back on April the 11th when we have another terrific show for you. We will be joined by U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman. Don't forget, we're live this time every second Sunday. And between those live Sundays, watch the great shows you've missed, like our interviews with Ambassador Michael Oren, or Tracy Ann Oberman, or Colonel Richard Kemp, or Professor Judea Pearl, Ambassador Danny Danon, and so many others. Go to StandWithUs.tv, where you'll find a ton of great video content available at no cost any time of day. Don't forget, if you love the work of Stand With Us, please support us at StandWithUs.com/donate. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for standing with us, and shalom from Stand With Us.